Hi guys, it's Allie from Stuck on You Crochet, and today we are going to learn the waffle stitch. So if you're following along with our Stitchwork Scarf stitch along, then this is block 5 that we're going to be working on the waffle stitch. If you are not working on the Stitchwork Scarf and you're just here to learn the waffle stitch, then this tutorial will work for you as well, but I will be sharing the instructions according to the Stitchwork Scarf pattern. So we left off in block 4 at the end of the spike stitch, and you should have gotten to the end of row 25 and then placed a stitch marker to block off your work there. So in block 5, we're going to be continuing with the color that we ended on in the spike stitch. You can see we only have one row here on our last row of spike stitch, and that's okay because we're going to continue this color as we work in the next block. So you can go ahead and take this stitch marker out. And to get started, we need to chain 2. So chain 2 and then turn your work over. In block 5, we need a total of 30 stitches. So in our first row, we're going to work an increase stitch so that we can get from 29 stitches in the last block to 30 stitches in this block. We're going to work double crochet stitches for our first row, and that's what we'll use throughout for the waffle stitch. So to work a double crochet, you'll yarn over, insert the hook into the stitch space, yarn over and draw up a loop, yarn over and draw through 2 loops, and then yarn over and draw through the last 2 loops. So this gives us a much taller stitch than the single crochet. So you'll continue to work across. We're going to start with 14 double crochet stitches. After our 14 double crochet stitches, we're going to work an increase stitch. So this just means that we're going to work 2 double crochet stitches into the same space. And this will help us increase that stitch count from 29 across to 30 across. So work 2 double crochet into the same space, and then you'll finish out the row with 14 double crochet stitches. At the end of row 1, we're going to chain 2, and then we'll turn the work over. And now we're ready for row 2. So you'll see in row 2, it notes that the chain 2, the turning chain 2, counts as a double crochet in this block. So what that means is since we've made this chain 2 right here, we are not going to work into this first stitch space because our turning chain is counting as the stitch in that space. So for row 2, we have our chain 2, which counts as the first stitch, and then we're going to work a front post double crochet stitch. So to do this, you're going to yarn over, and then these are the posts of our stitch. So here's a post, here's a post, here's a post. So to work a front post, we're going to insert our hook from the front around the back to the other side. And by doing that, it will pull this stitch forward. So like I said, we're going to yarn over, insert the hook from around the front of the post to the back, and then around the other side, and draw up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops to finish the double crochet stitch. For the next 2 stitches, we're going to we're going to work regular double crochet stitches. So you'll see here, now we're going to go into the tops of these 2 stitches. So work 1 double crochet stitch in each of those 2 stitches. And then we're going to repeat that. So on the next stitch, rather than working into the top right here, we'll work around the post. So yarn over, work around the post, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then in the next 2 stitches, we'll work 2 regular double crochet stitches. So you'll notice, and it will become more apparent as we work up, but you'll notice that that pulls those posts forward, and that's going to give us the texture of the waffle stitch. So continue working across in that same manner. When you get to the end of row 2, you're only going to have 2 stitches left. So we'll work a front post double crochet around this stitch, and then in the final stitch, we're going to work a double crochet. And this will mirror what we did at the beginning of the row because our turning chain counted as a stitch at the beginning. So now we've reached the end of row 2. We're going to chain 2 and then turn our work over. In row 3, we're going to do something similar, but we're going to work in an opposite fashion so that we continue to push these ridges forward. So again, our chain 2 will count as a stitch here, so we're not going to work our first stitch into this stitch space. We're going to work a double crochet stitch, and this will go into the top of what was our front post double crochet in the last row. So work a regular double crochet stitch there, and then in the next 2 stitches, we're going to work front post double crochet stitches. So there's 1, and then we'll go around this post and work 2. Then we'll work a regular double crochet, and then we'll work 2 front post double crochet. So I'll do a few more. We'll work a regular double crochet, and then 2 front post double crochet. And I'll show you what this is doing to the front of our work. So you can see now we've got these 2 ridges that are being pulled back on this side. And on the front of our work, you can see how our front posts are pushed forward and our regular double crochet stitches, they're being pushed towards the back. And this creates this waffle texture. So continue that same pattern, repeating across row 3. Okay, so now here we are at the end of row 3, and it looks like we don't have any more space to put our last stitch. But if you remember, our chain 2 counts as a stitch in this row. So in row 3, when it says to front post double crochet around the chain, that's this turning chain that we're working around. So we'll work our final front post double crochet around that stitch, and then chain 2, and we'll turn everything over. So you can see the beginning of our waffle here. I will say the waffle stitch likes to cinch, so if you find that it's really pulling in, then you can increase your hook size. It also will block at the end of this scarf, and that will also help. But if you're having trouble with it, then you can increase your hook size. So then in row 4, we're just going to repeat what we did in row 2. So we have our turning chain at the beginning, and we're going to skip this stitch. We're going to work a front post double crochet to pull this post forward, and then we'll work 2 double crochet stitches. And then a front post, and then 2 double crochet, a front post, and then 2 double crochet. And you'll start to see, as you get used to the stitch and the pattern, you'll start to identify which ones are supposed to be pulled forward. So you can see they're kind of raising up off the surface of the work anyways. So continue that all the way across row 4, and then row 5 is just going to be a repeat of row 3. So you're going to alternate repeats between row 2 and 3 until you get to row 13. So go ahead and work those now. We'll work all the way to row 13, and I'll come back at the end of that row so that we can go over row 14. Okay, so you'll notice here that I am not quite at the end of row 13. I'm actually only at the end of row 7, but I'm going to go ahead and show you what to do at the end of row 13 because I'm quickly losing my daylight hours. So you will work all the way up to row 13, and you will notice this series of boxes that stack on top of each other. And after you finish row 13, we're going to use row 14 to set up for the next block. So if you are just here to learn the waffle stitch, then you don't have to follow this portion. But if you are here for the stitch along, or you're working the Stitchwork Scarf, then you want to use row 14 to get set up for the next block in the Stitchwork Scarf. So at the end of row 13, you're going to chain 1, and then turn everything over. And in row 14, we need to go from 30 stitches back down to 29. So you'll notice the blocks don't have the same count. And so some of our finishing rows in some of these blocks are just getting set up for the next block and the number of stitches that it needs. So in row 14, we're going to work 14 single crochet stitches, and then because we need to decrease the total number of stitches, we're going to single crochet 2 together. So we're going to insert our hook into the first space and draw up a loop, and then insert your hook into the second space and draw up a loop. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, and this will turn these 2 spaces into just 1 space. Then you'll finish the row with 14 single crochet stitches. And again, when we get to the end of this row and it looks like there's no stitch spaces left, it's because the turning chain counts as a stitch. So our final single crochet stitch is going to be worked around that turning chain. And that's going to help pull that chain out too so that it doesn't cinch in. So you should have more blocks than I do at the end of, or more of these little squares than I do at the end of this block. But you'll use this same method for that final row across the top. So once you get to the end of block 5, we are not going to use this color for block 6. So you can use a stitch marker to mark off this final stitch. And then you can go ahead and cut this color and grab your next color to be ready for block 6. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. This one can be a little tricky, so if you have any trouble, please, please, please feel free to ask me a question or ask in the chat group. But just make sure that when you're working those front post double crochets that they are working around the correct stitch to pull it forward. It is a fun one once you get the hang of it. So thanks for joining, and I'll be back with block 6.